Sarah packed 15 years of her life into 3 suitcases last Tuesday. In doing so, she joined an estimated 40,000 expatriates who have quietly left Dubai this year alone. But here's the detail that rarely makes it into the international headlines. This isn't simply a story about homesickness or routine career moves. What we're witnessing is something far more structural. For decades, Dubai marketed itself as a tax-free haven, a place of golden visas, luxury living, and unlimited opportunity. The promise was simple: relocate, work hard, and enjoy a lifestyle that few global cities could match. Yet the reality now emerging suggests that this carefully constructed narrative is beginning to fracture, and it is doing so at a remarkable pace. In this report, we examine the data behind what increasingly looks like a silent population retreat. Even among high-earning expatriates, people who once championed the Dubai model, there is a growing sense that the equation no longer adds up. The question now confronting policymakers across the Gulf is straightforward: what exactly is driving this quiet exodus? To begin with, the official figures themselves raise important questions. Data released by the UAE Federal Competitiveness and Statistics Center indicates a clear shift in migration patterns across the Emirates. In 2024 alone, more than 127,000 residency visas were cancelled. That figure significantly exceeds the number of new visas issued or renewed during the same period. This is not the sort of fluctuation normally associated with routine labor mobility. The numbers point instead to a sustained outflow of residents, one that appears to be accelerating month by month. If you look closely, the evidence is visible across multiple sectors. Take education, for instance. International schools in Dubai were once synonymous with long waiting lists and fierce competition for places. Yet many of those same institutions are now reporting substantial declines in enrollment. Some major schools have seen numbers fall by more than 23%. Families are withdrawing children mid-term, often forfeiting large deposits simply to leave early. That kind of decision rarely happens without serious financial pressure behind it. Corporate behavior tells a similar story. Several multinational firms that once showcased their Dubai headquarters as regional hubs are quietly relocating functions elsewhere. Increasingly, operations are shifting towards Saudi Arabia or Singapore. The skyline of Dubai remains impressive, of course. The towers still glitter in the desert sun, but inside some of those offices, the workforce has thinned noticeably. What were once thriving corporate floors are, in some cases, operating with skeleton teams. To understand why this matters, we need to step back and consider how unusual Dubai's economic model has always been. At its peak in 2019, the expatriate population reached roughly 3.5 million people. That represented around 85% of the entire population of the city. In other words, the overwhelming majority of residents were foreign nationals. Few global cities operate on such a demographic foundation. Dubai's rise was built on a clear and compelling proposition. Professionals from across the world were invited to relocate, free from income tax, and work within a rapidly expanding economy positioned between Europe, Asia, and Africa. Over the course of just half a century, that formula transformed what had once been a modest fishing settlement into a global commercial center. The pace of development was extraordinary. Infrastructure, transport, finance, tourism, the city seemed to deliver on every promise it made. But today there are signs that the bargain underpinning that success is beginning to unravel. One of the most immediate pressures facing residents is housing. Over the past 2 years, Dubai's rental market has undergone a dramatic shift. Average rents in prime locations have risen between 35% and 40% year on year. According to figures from the Real Estate Regulatory Agency, accommodation that once fell comfortably within the reach of middle-class expatriates has become significantly more expensive. Consider a typical example. A 2-bedroom apartment in Dubai Marina that rented for around 80,000 dirhams per year in 2021 can now command well over 130,000. In practical terms, that means housing costs rising from roughly £22,000 annually to closer to £35,000, and that assumes you can secure a property at all. The situation has been compounded by recent changes to rental regulations. Amendments to the law have effectively removed the caps that previously limited annual rent increases. Landlords are now able to impose far larger hikes when leases are renewed. For long-term residents, the choice can be stark, accept a dramatic increase in housing costs, or leave. Many are choosing to leave. One British executive who requested anonymity due to contractual restrictions described the situation bluntly. His family had already navigated the disruptions of the pandemic. They had adapted to the introduction of VIT and absorbed rising grocery prices. But when their landlord demanded a 45% rent increase after already imposing a 30% rise the previous year, the calculation changed. After 15 years in Dubai, the family packed up and left. Housing, however, is only one part of a much broader affordability problem. Education costs have become another critical pressure point, particularly for families with children. Dubai's international schools have long marketed themselves as among the best in the world. Yet since 2022, tuition fees at many institutions have increased by between 15 and 25% annually. These rises have been formally approved by the Knowledge and Human Development Authority. In isolation, the increases might be justifiable, but when combined with rapidly rising housing costs, they create a financial burden that many households simply cannot sustain. Schools that once operated at full capacity are now confronting a new reality. Institutions such as the British School of Dubai and several campuses operated by GEMS Education have reported declining enrollment for the first time in decades. Behind the scenes, administrators acknowledge a growing trend. Some families are relocating entirely to more affordable countries. Others are making a difficult compromise, sending children back to their home nations while one parent remains in Dubai as the primary income earner. The social consequences of that shift are significant. Dubai long promoted itself as a place where expatriate professionals could build stable family lives. Yet the emerging pattern increasingly resembles an older Gulf labor model, one where workers reside temporarily while families remain elsewhere. Instead of building communities, many residents are reverting to the role of temporary earners sending money home. For a city whose success depended heavily on attracting and retaining global talent, that change raises serious questions about the sustainability of the model going forward. The corporate landscape in Dubai is shifting just as dramatically as the residential one. Several major consulting firms, including PwC, Deloitte, and McKinsey, have quietly begun reducing their workforce presence in the city while expanding operations elsewhere across the region. One senior manager at a Big Four firm, speaking privately, offered a remarkably candid assessment. According to him, nearly 40% of the firm's regional operations have been relocated to Riyadh over the past 18 months. The decision, he explained, was not publicly announced, but internally the rationale was clear. The cost structure in Dubai no longer makes commercial sense. This shift is not happening in isolation. Saudi Arabia's sweeping economic transformation, particularly under the umbrella of Vision 2030, is aggressively targeting the same global talent pool that once defaulted to Dubai. Flagship initiatives such as the ambitious NEOM project are designed precisely for that purpose, to attract international expertise and reposition the kingdom as a new regional hub. The incentives on offer are difficult to ignore. Saudi employers are increasingly providing housing allowances, education subsidies, and long-term employment packages that many Dubai-based companies have gradually phased out. In a competitive global labor market, those benefits carry considerable weight. At the same time, established financial and commercial centers in Asia are regaining momentum. Cities such as Singapore and Hong Kong are once again asserting themselves as premier regional headquarters for multinational firms. Their appeal lies not only in infrastructure and connectivity, areas where Dubai once held a clear advantage, but also in regulatory clarity and predictable operating costs. For companies seeking stability in an uncertain global environment, those factors matter enormously. Perhaps the most concerning development for Dubai's long-term prospects, however, lies within its own immigration framework. The city's highly publicized visa programs, particularly the Golden Visa Initiative, were marketed internationally as providing long-term residency security for investors and highly skilled professionals. In theory, the program was designed to anchor global talent in the UAE for extended periods. In practice, many applicants report a far more complicated reality. Requirements have gradually tightened. Processing times have lengthened significantly. Minimum investment thresholds have been revised upwards on several occasions. The result is a system that appears increasingly bureaucratic and unpredictable. One financial services professional who recently relocated to Singapore after 8 years in Dubai described the process in stark terms. He applied for a golden visa under the specialized talent category in early 2023. What followed, he said, was 15 months of delays, repeated document requests, and constantly shifting eligibility criteria. Eventually, he abandoned the effort altogether. When his employer offered a role in Singapore, he accepted. Within 3 weeks, his Singapore employment pass had been approved. For many expatriate professionals, that contrast is striking. Visa uncertainty has also created complications for family reunification. In recent years, salary thresholds required to sponsor spouses or children have increased substantially. Some professionals now find themselves unable to bring immediate family members to live with them in Dubai, a situation that fundamentally alters the long-term viability of relocation. Taken together, these developments raise a fundamental question. What exactly is driving this convergence of pressures? In reality, several forces are operating simultaneously. First, there is the broader economic challenge facing Gulf economies as they prepare for a future less dependent on oil revenues. Governments across the region are searching for new fiscal streams, and in many cases that search has manifested in additional fees, service charges, and indirect taxation mechanisms. For expatriates who initially relocated under the promise of a low-cost, tax-efficient environment, these incremental changes have gradually altered the financial calculation. Second, regional competition has intensified dramatically. Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030 strategy represents not merely a development program, but a direct challenge to Dubai's long-standing role as the Gulf's primary commercial hub. With significantly deeper financial reserves and an explicit mandate to diversify its economy, Riyadh is offering incentives that Dubai may struggle to match without fundamentally adjusting its own model. Third, the post-pandemic shift toward remote and hybrid working has reshaped corporate decision-making. Many companies are now questioning whether maintaining expensive regional headquarters in high-cost locations remains necessary when skilled employees can operate effectively from more affordable bases while still serving the same markets. Currency dynamics have added another layer of complexity. The way dirhams peg to the US dollar means that as the dollar strengthens, Dubai becomes more expensive relative to many expatriates' home countries. For professionals from the United Kingdom, the European Union, or several Asian economies where local currencies have weakened against the dollar, the cost of living in Dubai has effectively risen even further. And then there is the issue of infrastructure pressure. Dubai's rapid population growth over the past 2 decades has placed significant strain on transportation networks, utilities, and everyday services. Traffic congestion, rising service costs, and the growing demand on public systems have begun to erode elements of the quality of life that once defined the city's appeal. Behind the statistics lie thousands of individual decisions. Professional networking platform LinkedIn has increasingly become a public record of departures, with long-term Dubai residents posting farewell messages and announcing relocations. What once felt like a permanent base for global careers now appears, for some, to be a temporary chapter. Online expatriate communities tell a similar story. Facebook groups such as Dubai Expat Families and British Expats Dubai have gradually shifted tone. Where discussions once focused on lifestyle opportunities and social events, conversations now frequently revolve around relocation logistics and strategies for returning home. Reddit forums documenting expatriate experiences have attracted thousands of comments, many from residents expressing a sense of frustration, even betrayal, after years of investing their professional and personal lives in the city. Networking events, once vibrant gatherings in Dubai's luxury hotels, are also reporting noticeable changes. Attendance is lower and the conversations have shifted. Instead of discussing expansion plans or new ventures, many attendees are quietly comparing exit strategies. Perhaps the most striking aspect of this trend, however, is the relative silence surrounding it. Many expatriates who leave are bound by employment contracts that discourage or explicitly forbid public criticism of their employers or the business environment. Corporate non-disclosure clauses often extend well beyond the workplace itself. At the same time, there are persistent reports that media coverage of population decline has been moderated or softened. Several journalists have privately acknowledged that stories addressing expatriate departures or demographic shifts have been edited extensively or declined altogether. The result is a widening gap between perception and reality. New arrivals continue to relocate to Dubai based on an image that may no longer fully reflect conditions on the ground. Meanwhile, the people leaving rarely speak openly about the factors behind their decisions. The broader economic implications could be significant. Consumer spending, a critical driver of Dubai's retail and hospitality sectors, is already showing signs of softening. These industries collectively employ hundreds of thousands of workers and depend heavily on a stable expatriate population. The real estate market is another potential vulnerability. Approximately 70% of property ownership in Dubai is linked to expatriate buyers. If population decline becomes sustained, property demand could weaken sharply, triggering price corrections far larger than those seen in previous market cycles. Government finances are also indirectly exposed. Infrastructure projects and urban development initiatives have been planned on the assumption of continued population growth. A shrinking resident base could place pressure on those projections. There is also the issue of talent migration. Key sectors such as finance, technology, and healthcare depend heavily on specialized international professionals. If those individuals increasingly choose alternative locations, the long-term competitiveness of the city may be affected. The regional implications extend beyond the way itself. Other Gulf states that once looked to Dubai as a blueprint for economic diversification are now reassessing aspects of that model. Saudi Arabia's challenge is no longer theoretical. It is unfolding in real time. Some economic analysts have begun to raise a more uncomfortable possibility. If current trends continue, Dubai could face a broader economic slowdown. Particular attention is focused on the city's ability to deliver long-term commitments tied to major international initiatives, including the legacy projects connected to the 2030 World Expo vision. Which brings us to a central question. What do Dubai's policymakers know that they are not yet saying publicly? It is almost certain that internal studies examining population sustainability and economic resilience exist within government departments. And it is equally likely that those assessments present a more complex picture than the optimistic narratives often presented externally. The challenge for Dubai's leadership is stark. The city's success was built on a powerful formula, low cost, high opportunity, and relative openness in a region often associated with bureaucracy and restrictions. That combination proved extraordinarily effective for decades. But the current trajectory risks transforming Dubai into something different, a high-cost environment offering only moderate competitive advantage. Recognizing that shift is the first step toward addressing it. Behind closed doors, several potential policy responses are reportedly under discussion. Rent control legislation has been raised as a possibility, although property developers and landlords represent a politically influential constituency that strongly resists such intervention. Targeted corporate tax exemptions for strategic industries are another option under consideration. These could help retain multinational firms and prevent further relocation of regional headquarters. Visa reforms are also frequently mentioned. Streamlining application processes and relaxing sponsorship requirements for skilled professionals could help address emerging talent shortages. Infrastructure investment may, over time, reduce some of the cost pressures residents face, but major projects of that scale require years to deliver results, time that policymakers may not have if population outflows continue. What is clear is that the window for adjustment is narrowing. Every expatriate departure represents more than a canceled visa. It represents lost consumer spending, lost tax revenue, lost expertise, and fewer international connections, all elements that help transform Dubai into a global city. For many former residents, the conclusion feels deeply personal. They arrived believing in a vision of opportunity and stability. Yet, as costs rose and conditions shifted, the terms of that vision appeared to change. The expatriates who helped build Dubai's modern economy increasingly feel they are being priced out of the very success they helped create. And that raises a final question worth considering. Are we witnessing a temporary correction or the beginning of a much larger structural shift in the Gulf's economic landscape?